Hey,
Hey,
he's in here, bro.
Hey, good
Okay,
to be
no, we're
here.
doing a reset.
Lewis, move closer. Move closer to Chris.
We got you. It's probably not a good time to be fiddling with things.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah. Hello. Squeeze in here. Hey, gang. Welcome to our second episode of our web tech talk show called Connect the Dots. Came up as an idea between Arjuna and I when we were listening to some of the old car guys call-in shows and having people call in with complicated car questions and giving simple answers with a bit of a lighthearted approach. But anyway, we're all about making ourselves and our friends and our guests like Yanis here and Mike, who you'll meet in a moment, to get great minds in the web tech and MarTech space and to create an environment where we can answer your questions, have some good conversations about what's new and what's happening in that space. Our guests are industry and thought leaders, and we really thank whoever is out there for making time to join the show, and we hope that we can add some real value in the discussions we have. And this is also brought to you in part by Dotfusion. Arjun, I'll throw it over to you for a bit.
Oh, sure. Yeah, so for the past 25 years, all the gang at Dotfusion, we've been building like beautiful digital things with our friends, primarily, web apps, websites, IoT stuff on like a ton of enterprise platforms. And just imagine we've been building stuff wherever you see a screen and you can shove an enterprise platform on it. We kind of work out of a bunch of places all over the world, but our main office is in Toronto, where Yanis and Chris are sitting. And I don't know if you can see, but right behind them, there's a fantastic collection of Canadian art. It's verdant with plants. There's tons of musical instruments and a couple of bicycles. We typically juggle like tons of digital projects at once, enterprise projects, a lot of not-for-profit work, and every now and then we do like something small for like a friend down the hall. And we're real experts and partners of like multiple content, commerce, and MarTech platforms, like Contentful, Agility, .cms, Magnolia, Shopify, Salesforce, just name a few. We're also a B Corp, which means that we are kind of committed to being sustainable and equitable, and we kind of use our business as a force for good. And as a part of this, we have an initiative in Cambodia where we have a commitment to technology skill development in this kind of underserved geography. Okay, that sounded very heavy duty, but I'm going to give it back to Chris now.
Awesome. So let's get to the heart of the program here, which is taking questions that we get from our customers who are typically marketing executives and CMOs and digital leaders who are tasked with making big decisions on technology stuff. And there's lots of terms and jargon and stuff that gets thrown around out there. So we want to make it easy and approachable. We are broadcasting on several different platforms that have messaging and commenting sections. We have a great team from Cometa who is managing these, and we're happy to take your questions and answer them. Just before we get to introducing our amazing guest, we are slightly sponsored in a way by this amazing company called 24 Good Deeds, and they make these advent calendars. And each day there's a representation of one of the 24 Good Deeds, which is a charity, and you buy these for $24, and $1 a day is donated to 24 different charities. And we are going to sponsor a 24 Good Deeds calendar for every question that gets posted in the comment section that we wind up answering on the show. So great folks doing cool things. Okay, let's introduce a longtime friend of Dotfusion and an industry expert. His name is Mike Annett. He is the co-chair for the MarTech Council for the Canadian Marketing Association. And we met years and years ago, and he was our exact target partner. He's spent time with IBM, Salesforce, Adobe, ExactTarget, and all kinds of interesting enterprise software platforms. And he is going to be our main man answering questions here, in particular around the MarTech stack and where kind of Gen AI plays a role in there. So maybe, Mike, why don't we give you a moment to introduce yourself here? We're just getting adjusted to a bit of the production sharing stuff here. But Mike, do you want to just share a little bit about what was going on in your world as you made some transitions through enterprise software organizations and how you wound up on the MarTech Council, and what are some of the great thoughts and experiences that you bring to the table?
First of all, thank you, Chris, for the opportunity. Chris and Arjuna, awesome partner, boutique agency that really drives success for customers. And I think what brought me into the MarTech space really was my experience at IBM. At that time, Salesforce, Google, all these cloud companies didn't exist. And so, is that okay? You guys can hear me okay? Feedback, just working through the technical stuff. Give us a break.
Awesome.
Without belaboring the story, I spent the past 23 years in the MarTech space because it's really changed the way we communicate with customers. And the real excitement is really translating success between the worlds of IT and marketing and being that liaison between those worlds to help translate technology into business and business success, and vice versa. And I think meeting Dotfusion was so incredible at the time because customers didn't know how to use these enterprise platforms, and it was complicated. And CMOs in 2012 especially were not very technical and struggled with a lot of the change that was happening. And companies, partners like Dotfusion, helped ExactTarget grow our footprint in Canada and really set us up for success in the Canadian market. So my experience with Dotfusion is really the extension of a tech vendor, but doing all the wonderful things like Arjuna said to bring that enterprise application to the screens.
Awesome, man. And just before we get to some questions, I wanted to take a moment now to introduce Janus Boy here, who's kind of sitting alongside. He has come in from Denmark to lead the Toronto CMS Experts Jam, which happened yesterday. And it's just a pleasure that you happened to be cruising by a half an hour ago and we found a seat for you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always great thoughts and good questions. Mike, do you want to maybe just get into a little bit about the MarTech discussion and maybe share your thoughts on kind of contemporary technologies and Gen AI and how it's kind of getting intertwined with marketing technology from a CMO perspective? Those are our customers and they're asking us these questions and they're uncertain, and maybe you could shed some light on that kind of AI-ish integration with the MarTech stack.
Yeah, okay, perfect. So I think when you look at why I joined the MarTech Council, and it's really about helping to educate marketers on what's going on in the technology space. Gen AI is a perfect example, Gen AI. But I think there's a lot of confusion around it, right? And I think part of that confusion is defining what AI is and is not, and then knowing that AI is not new, right? So AI has been around for over 50 years, right? Watson was probably the first real AI tool that went deep level with, back in the 70s against that Russian chess player and actually won. That was kind of the foray for companies like IBM into AI, right? Fast forward to where we are today, and we just saw all the craziness with OpenAI and that executive team and the board, right? But what OpenAI is putting the hands of AI, like the power of AI, into the hands of the public. So now marketers who can't code, who can't do those kinds of things, who are not AI scientists, they're able to leverage the value of generative AI. And what is Gen AI, right? And these are the kinds of things that I hope to define, or at least give a better understanding of today. And so Gen AI is that ability to provide different levels of content creation, and we'll get into all the use cases. But we're at that Gen AI level, it's about taking these massive deep learning platforms and models and using them to create images, to create content, to go through mass amounts of data and use these deep learning tools to spit out answers to questions or prompts, as they say in OpenAI or ChatGPT, right? And there's a lot of deep level understanding now, even so quickly, of how to use different prompts to get different kinds of answers. And one example is for sales teams or a marketer, they could literally go into the prompt and say, act as my buyer, let's say a certain persona or segment, and write me copy based on this persona and segment for this particular product. And the Gen AI tool or ChatGPT will spit out content for that particular persona, segment, product, whatever experience you create. It's amazing, but there's challenges with that, and hopefully we'll get into that today. But very high level.
Yeah, cool. But Yannis, you just spent most of yesterday with 7 or 8 different content platform vendors and suppliers. What was the kind of discussion around Gen AI that I guess was highlighted yesterday?
Yes, I think one of the participants yesterday put it quite well, where he said that every vendor today has 20, 30 different examples of using Gen AI for this and that. But he characterized it as most of them, if not all of them at the moment, are what he would call cute. Like there's this tendency, and I think it's an old quote, that we overestimate the impact on the short term. We'll see about the long term if we underestimate it, but yes, it's all the boss. It comes up at every meeting. Like you said, Mike, there's clearly a lot of confusion. And I think it comes back also to the term AI, because people get it wrong because there's no I yet. It's not intelligent yet.
Yeah, AIY yet.
Yeah, I think just to double click on that, I think the biggest challenge is it's become the bright, shiny object. So everyone's trying to get ahead of it and trying to be an all-knowing of it, but no one has all the answers. And it's a rabbit hole, really. Getting into that can be very dangerous too, because there's a lot of challenges that go with that. There's copyright infringement, there's ethical issues, there's even the AI safety, right? Putting AI and these deep learning models in the wrong hands is what we've been talking about. That whole Terminator thing, that is obviously an extreme kind of version of it. But Stephen Hawking did talk about that as being one of the biggest concerns he had before he passed away, was AI and deep learning models in the wrong hands. But what we're talking about is so high level that there are use cases that can be used, but it's assistive. And Chris, you and I were just talking about this. The biggest challenge I see, if we're going to talk about marketing executives, if you have a bad strategy from the beginning to the end, and you're using Gen AI with a bad strategy, it's not going to solve your bad strategy. You're still not going to get ROI from your tech stack. You're still not going to get anything that you're looking for from a KPI perspective with the beginning of a bad strategy. You can't solve for that with Gen AI.
Yes, I think in Europe we have this saying that a fool with a tool is still a fool.
That's right. That's beautifully said.
We also had a bank present yesterday who talked about the use cases of this, and I think that's probably your home turf, Mike. But it's also clear that this accelerates things. Like it's almost like a super collider at the moment with AI, data, composability, and any organization wants more resources. But with tools like this, it's clear that you can do campaigns quicker, you can do targeting, you can do personalization, you can certainly take many steps closer to what has been the holy grail for many of the Dotfusion customers for years. And I think it's really interesting to follow, but I wish more analysts would say that we don't know. It remains to be seen. What's your take, Mike, on all these, the acceleration?
Yeah, I think, again, well said. I go back to that strategy and challenge, people, process, and technology. it's so critical to the success of your business. But if you look at the use cases, everything comes back to a strategy, right? So if you look at the use cases that are coming out of Gen AI right now, and McKinsey wrote a great white paper that I don't know how we can share this with the group, but there's a great white paper on the economics of generative AI, and it talks about some of the use cases that are forming for the different types of roles. And sales and marketing is one of the key areas where they see the ability to potentially, and keyword potentially, leverage Gen AI. And some of those areas are like better content creation, enhanced use of data, optimizing your SEO strategy for keyword search and research, product discovery and search personalization done by customers, to the point where they're talking about online. And Chris, you can appreciate building applications that can support this, but being able to write up product specific copy by persona or segment, or even at that customer level, personal to Michael Annett or personal to Chris Bryce. The other one where a lot of marketers have a lot of challenges is driving an improved lead development strategy. So when you think of the B2B world and the challenges that marketers have there, they're always challenged with getting proper leads into the system and nurturing those leads into a sale or conversion. So they're talking about using Gen AI to make better data and personalization decisions in that nurturing journey of lead development, or helping to increase the probability of that sale or conversion, whether you're thinking about a widget that you're selling in Amazon all the way down to a B2B relationship when you're trying to close an enterprise sale. So these are the areas they're talking about.
Cool. We're just having a little bit of what happens after all of that programmatic personalization. And we were just talking about it earlier, that all of a sudden every digital screen or interface will be saying the same thing to you. So, okay, if we get a step ahead of that even, then what do brands do? Right? You can say, speak to my customer as my brand, but if it's going to be so biased to communicating to all my personal attributes it's collected through my journeys, that gets me thinking that brands that are thinking, super future strategy is, how do we also maintain our own pure, authentic identities and almost don't cave to the rush to hyper over optimization of everything? So there's a fine balance in the art and the poetry and unique essence of a brand to stand alone and free and vulnerable, versus it's almost like AI is the makeup, and you're just kind of face covering so you appear to a standard that doesn't necessarily have a high priority or recognition by unique individuals. And there's a few things that go on as humans get more AI hitting them. They're going to want to be able to abstract from that and look for reality at the same time. So it gets kind of complicated.
I think, to your point, a lot of the conversations that we have with executives is at the high level, they don't understand how these tools actually work in their ecosystem. So a lot of the conversations we end up having, especially in discovery, and when you think about workshopping, right? A lot of the stuff we did at Adobe and Salesforce, even at ExactTarget, Chris, we started doing these deep dive workshops into the tech ecosystem. So it wasn't about selling anything. It was more consultative, because we needed to understand your people, your processes, and then we can talk technology, right? Because we need to learn, first of all, what you have in your ecosystem, and that includes your people. And by the way, a company like Dotfusion is part of the people, right? Because most of the time, the big challenge you're going to find, especially in enterprise companies in Canada, you don't have the right talent pool to really augment or even drive those KPIs with that tech stack. So, the biggest thing, we called it the digital hangover. This was a term that even pre-pandemic really came out, right? Like in the early 2020s.
That's what you get the day after CMS experts.
That's what I get when I hang with all you guys.
I do.
No, but the reality is this digital hangover is real, right? And this term, it's not a buzz term, it's actually a real challenge. And there's millions being spent on platforms, but no results being driven, right? And there's a huge conundrum coming when we talk about the cookieless world, right? And that is real. And so a lot of companies are struggling now with their first party data strategy because they always leverage third party data, second party data. They had these data management platforms, right? DMP, or you have like a term CDP, which is a customer data platform. These things get all very confusing very fast. And then we had the black box in, the 2010s, right, with display advertising in the ad tech world. The black box being, look, I didn't know where my media ended up. So me as a brand, I'm not going to name any large brands that did this, but they all had this problem. They would spend 10 million, $20 million on a display advertising strategy, but they didn't see the results. They didn't get the ROI. It was less than 1% click-through rate, or any of the KPIs that you would expect to see. Now, the workhorse in all these environments, it's always been email marketing, right? Because that is the go-to because of what? Think about it. First-party data. It is the only channel that the brand really natively controls first-party data, because it's permission-based from the outset, right? The whole can spam rules and all the castle laws and all the privacy laws that exist in Europe, like GDPR and all the rules that we have right now for privacy, email is still that stalwart. It's still that linchpin that brings all the channels together, right? But no one wants to talk about it. It's the 800-pound gorilla in the room that no one wants to talk about. And I always challenge millennials all the time, right? I go, well, how do you log into social? How do you log into your TikTok? Well, I have to use my email address. And they say it in a way that's so, as a matter of fact, like, okay, boomer, right? And I'm like, I'm actually Gen X, but anyways, so it gets all over the place.
Just on that, I don't know if you guys have seen this. There's a fantastic generational study that USPS did on just how people are using email and post, like just standard old school post and email. Really cool. I'll put that in the link for the show notes as well. But it's basically like says exactly what Mike is saying. Like that's everyone is still interacting with emails so heavily, and it's just something that you can't forget.
And don't get me wrong. I want to pause on this for a second. I'm not saying email is the only channel and like put all your money there. What I'm saying is you need an omni-channel strategy, right? And that is what a MarTech stack delivers on, right? So we go back to the foundation of a MarTech stack. Chris, you and I debated this for years, and Arjuna, we debated this for years. We always talked about best of breed solutions, but then there was this time where enterprise platforms were like, no, you need everything on one platform, right? Microsoft would love it no more than everyone's on Azure. You do everything in Azure and you don't use any other cloud strategy, right? But it's not realistic. It's not possible because you need the flexibility of an open API structure so you can leverage best of breed solutions and truly drive your strategy and be able to pivot when you get it wrong. If you're all in on one platform, the dangers are that your KPIs are at risk and you're spending millions and millions of dollars on something that just never will work, right? And so the more open your API structure is and the more open your environment is, the easier it is to pivot and drive that KPI. And especially today for large companies, the biggest challenge we're hearing is the lack of ROI from their MarTech stack. It is huge. Shareholders are now asking, why are we spending $50 million a year on all these different MarTech solutions, but we're driving nowhere near the ROI that you're promising me to get, right?
Yeah.
And so challenge is, this is an opportunity for companies like Dotfusion and the other SIs in the world to really help teach and educate with the vendors, these marketing technology folks.
Yeah, Mike, I just kind of picking up on some of that API discussion and just kind of observing what's going on in the world where there's a bit of a movement away from monolithic structures to more API driven,
right?
Call it headless orchestrated content. Arjuna, I know we had started a bit of a discussion around the interesting trends that are going on around integrations into that kind of headless content hub and other systems where we're kind of clustering API information together, and there's AI floating around in there too. Are you kind of bumping into any interesting highlights or cool, noteworthy stuff along your adventures of kind of architecting these solutions?
Yeah, I mean it's fairly interesting what's going on. There's a bunch of different things going on. One is, of course, having these kind of orchestration platforms that sit on top of things is definitely picking up steam now within communities outside developer circles. But that was something that developers were thinking about 8-9 years ago. And what's really weird is that now, if you look at like what's happening on the cutting edge of like what the developers are thinking about, they're thinking, let's go monolithic. And so we're going to see the swing in another 10 years again. And like one of the major scenes out of that was actually the people who maintain Ruby on Rails actually just went super down on monoliths again, and like, kind of kicking out this trend of like saying, okay, let's get rid of like these little bits and bobs that are floating around, bring everything into control. So essentially, with all this stuff, the key word is really control. It's like, how do you control these fragmented APIs walking around? Or how do you control it when it's a monolith? How do you control it when you're sitting married to one single cloud infrastructure? It's all around control. And there's some interesting nuances with, how we deal with control, but obviously we don't have enough time to jump in through all that. So,
speaking of time, you've got a moment to, I want to get
just a quick question for you, Mike. I think there's a MarTech divide. One thing I'm not so good at is FOMO and, fear. But it seems when I look out there also here in Toronto, speaking to customers, like there's an increasing divide in the MarTech space between those, like you said, who are not getting the ROI, but there's also those who are doing extremely well. And it seems like those two are really drifting apart. So there are some organizations who are investing and are reaping tremendous benefits, and Black Friday will be better than ever. But then others, for some reason, can't get it working. Are you seeing the same?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's, and it's vertical based too, right? So a lot of times you're seeing retail getting it better than anybody, figuring it out, building these tech stacks that are very flexible. The Shopify's, the Amazons of the world allowed a lot of these online retailers to really fine tune their strategies, right? Using social, Instagram. So there's great examples of how to use digital. Like there's no doubt that using digital marketing can be very successful, right? And I think the ones that are really winning are in that retail kind of travel hospitality world, but really specifically retail. And so what you end up seeing, and it's really interesting, this is the same story all the time, right? You see the old school verticals like banking, financial institutions, insurance, all that, telecom, struggling with that spend because they have these huge budgets. But it comes back to that whole saying, right? Just because you should do it, just because you can doesn't mean you should, right? And a lot of times you have people in and out of organizations, right? And so what you don't have is this consistency in spend in what the platform's delivering. So someone might have, I'm not going to name any companies, but let's say technology A and then a whole new team comes in and says, well, no, I'm in the technology B camp. And so they reset and they redo all these things, except the challenge is when you don't have the foundation right and your strategy's constantly changing, you are constantly recycling the same problem over and over again. And data is the challenge, right? Getting access to data, leveraging data, using data to actually do personalization right. So many companies get it wrong, and it just ends up being creepy. But personalization doesn't have to be creepy, right? And personalization means something different for Amazon than it does for my bank. I don't want the same level of personalization I get in Amazon in the bank. I want certain things to be not creepy because it's just, I don't want that kind of data being used. Like for instance, my spend, right? What I'm spending on Visa or what's in my bank account, right? Like all the things I buy and all that stuff. I don't want that data to be leveraged and used in personalization strategies, right? So there is privacy on the way certain types of data are leveraged. But I think where we could do a much better job is on that foundation strategy. And I come back and this is my mantra: people, process, technology. And I don't care if you're a small business of 10 people or if you're a monolithic, company with 100,000 plus employees. That model, once you get it right as a foundation, will serve your tech stack wonders for driving KPIs, right? It starts with the people, the process, and then the technology.
Sorry, guys, figuring out how to mute and unmute myself. I should have a handle on by now. Mike, just as you're kind of roaming around in technology land, do you have some examples of organizations that you feel are just kind of got it spot on? That was a question from my friend Justin. So maybe we could look at some models out there, shops, organizations that kind of have it heading in the right direction.
Yeah, I don't like that question. I always find those questions really tough, especially in a public environment like this with NDAs and all these things.
Maybe industries, I guess, or
I'll tell you right now, there are definitely a lot of great things happening in the States in retail, right? So you look at what's going on with Best Buys of the world, right? Like they're nailing it, right? And their Black Friday, Cyber Monday strategies, the US has always been ahead of probably. I'd say in Europe too, there's some really cool things happening in Europe, but I would say you look at what's going on with the big box stores in the US for Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and the small online retailers that have figured out their Shopify Amazon strategy, and they're using Instagram and Twitter and all these outlets in an omni-channel strategy tied into email, right? So you use social media with email together to drive that strategy. And then I would say the online retailers are leading the way on that charge, if you want my honest opinion on that.
Yeah, super cool. We are technically over time. I'm not sure if there's something that cut us off 2 minutes ago, or we can just keep on rambling.
Lost you, Chris.
Hey.
Yeah. I still see you here, but was it a half an hour? Is that what the episode was? We're still
sure.
live.
I think it's just great, and we just have a natural kind of flow. And I want to really that the ideas, just to get organic ideas that are interesting, new, and important for people to kind of participate in and share. That said, however, we've got to close down the episode. We will leave everyone's contact information.
If you don't mind, I really would like to wrap it up with one comment that just kind of ties this all together. And I think I've harped on this, and this is, you asked me what I've come across, and this is the biggest challenge that I think people can do and fix right away, right? Is stop what you're doing right now. Just stop everything, sit down and understand what your strategy is, right? Do an audit on your people, process, and technology right now, and stop, take a deep breath, and really think about what your strategy is for your MarTech stack, and fix the things that you can with low-hanging fruit, because there's some things you can fix right away, and then put a plan in place to start bringing in the right kind of technology pieces you need to change and grow. And companies like Dotfusion can help with that. And that's why your partner ecosystem is so important. But you can't speak to anyone until you understand your strategy. I can't stress that enough.
On that point, we have an amazing person who knows a lot about process and technology. Her name is Margaret Cooper. She is our guest next week. She is going to bring 25 years of experience in the commercial real estate world, dynamic human, and also a friend of Dotfusion. We are going to follow up on all of the channels with information on how to contact Yanis, Michael, Arjuna, and ourselves. I believe that there's a transcript and a podcast for this will find itself somewhere. We really appreciate everyone for making a moment in their day to listen and get involved and ask us questions. We're open to feedback, of course, and looking for ways to improve what we're able to do and deliver and share from a technology perspective. And on that note, it's been a real pleasure. Michael, super appreciative of you making some time to come by. Yanis, amazing to have you cruise by, and you're always welcome and really lovely. Arjuna, thanks for jumping on board from Montreal, and I'll sign out from Toronto and hope to see you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
See you all, guys.
Thank you.